right. Come on in, everybody. Come on in. Welcome to Gogi's Dinner Jam. So glad you chose to be here on this Saturday afternoon. It's 3 p.m. Eastern. I'm not sure what time it is for you, but you made a decision to be here, and I'm so glad you did. Our special guest, I hope she's in the house. I can't see right now, but I just first want to welcome you and thank you for supporting Sister Carrie. She's an ambassador for Christ, and she's the nun that got out of this evil situation, and yet she came back, and she's here to talk with us as a part of her ministry. I'm so glad to be a part of it, and excited to hear everything that she would like to share. There's a clip I wanted to play before we invite Sister Carrie to the mic, but this clip has to do with frequencies and church bells. So if you were on the jam on Tuesday, you heard it, but I want to play it now because it is relevant. And I just want to announce as well that this Tuesday we have coming a special guest. His name is Kenneth. I call him KG, and Onion Head will introduce him. And they're going to talk about cloaking. Are they using military-grade cloaking against TI? And the answer is yes. And so he has some valuable evidence, and also he is able to show us how to get dew strikes, to show evidence of the dew, which they say is invisible. So I'm interested in this, and we'll move forward with that on Tuesday. So I hope you'll join the jam then. Tell everybody. And then I look forward to seeing you back again the next week. The Jam Voices will be there on this Tuesday, caroling. And we have some more exciting things coming up. Another Saturday workshop with Major P, which I'm excited to introduce. I'm not sure if we're going to do it before the holidays, like before New Year's, or in January. But some exciting things happening in January, guys. So just hang in there, keep your head up, hold your tummy, and be strong and full of faith, because this too shall pass. All right, without further ado, I'm going to play the clip. And Sir Dan, thank you for being here. And can you play church bells?
So we are in Arkansas right now, and as you can see behind me, there's a church, and the church bells actually went off, and it was super interesting because, like, you don't hear church bells around anymore, and they've removed these church bells, and I started doing some digging, and apparently certain church bells all are tuned separately, like there's not one standard to church bells. However, apparently, they had healing frequencies. And the humming and all of this is very specific to bells. So a lot of people think that they actually removed church bells because of that, because it had a healing frequency and it used to tell us time. Now they're saying that church bells are an issue because of noise complaints. However, if you look at all of the old churches and the bells and the things that they have removed, it's kind of a little weird, don't you guys think? Because we are frequency, right? We're made out of frequency, like everything runs with frequency. And I've done so many like videos on how, frequency actually works, how we are made 80% out of water, and water has the rippling effect. So I'm wondering if those church bells used to actually calm down the parasympathetic system of people back in the day, and now they've removed that even further, because of all the 5G and all of those towers and the frequencies that they give off are actually not natural. But I want to know what you guys think. Now, this is what ChatGPT had to say. A church bell sound is made of several prominent partials that together create its characteristic tone. The important ones are hum note, prime or strike note, tierce, quint, and nominal, an octave above the prime. And then down here it says a large cathedral bell might have a strike note around 100 to 300 hertz. A small chapel bell might have 400 to 800 hertz or higher. Bells are cast and then tuned by removing metal from specific areas to adjust these partials. And we all know that certain frequencies can cause anxiety and certain other frequencies can cause calming effects. But I honestly want to know what you guys know about these church bells and the conspiracy behind them. It's kind of fun.
Thank you for that, Sir Dan. So they took these church bells out. They stopped them. They talk about the noise, the contribution to the noise. Yet one of the things they do with TIs is noise harassment, as we know. So, but they stopped the church bells, and some of them had a healing frequency. So we're open if you have any thoughts about it, and then I would love to hear from Sister Carrie. Necessarily. So, anybody, go ahead. If you have a response, please announce yourself, city and state, and what do you think about the church bell? Okay, seems as if I hear somebody trying to say something, but if not, I'm going to move on. So I want to introduce our guest for tonight, this afternoon, and that's none other than Sister Carrie, and she's going to speak on Skull on Remembrance. All right, Sister Carrie, are you with us?
I am. Thank you so much for having me again, Gogi. How are you?
I am as well as can be expected considering the circumstances. Glad to be here as well. And thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And I'm so glad we had time before Christmas because we've got a lot of fun things to discuss. And thanks for playing that clip. That is absolutely fascinating. And it is definitely a subject matter I have gone into depth studying. It's my understanding after studying these civilizations that have been covered up, specifically, namely that of Tartaria, that, these bells, they were mapping out the locations to actually knock down these buildings. And that's where World War I and II came into play. So they were purposely looking for these buildings to destroy them or repurpose them or Catholicize them. Okay? And that's why we have buildings here in the United States. When I went to France, it was really uncanny because on every, corner of the street, there was a church. They were huge, gorgeous. And I'm like, there's no way. How can you have a church on every single corner of the street here in France? Now, again, that was way back in 1994. And things were much, Paris and everything was so different way back then. Well, and then the same year, strangely enough, I went down to Washington, D.C. and through Pennsylvania. We would call it church hopping. So we would go to Philadelphia and all these places, and I'm like, Valerie, what the heck is going on? My friend who was with me, I'm like, these churches are just like the ones in Europe. And I couldn't understand how I could feel the same feelings that I could feel in these churches. So basically what they did was when they charted it out, they caused the war zones to cause these buildings to be blown up, and the bells to be melted down into bullets. So this was part of the design, and it was an operation that was covered up, but you could still see it on the front cover of, I think it was, Henry Kissinger's book there. It's in one of my videos. Ambassador Nectaria is up on YouTube. That's Nectaria. And there's plenty of videos I have done sequentially about this subject matter. But basically on the front of Kissinger's book, it shows none other than Tartaria in the middle of his book on the map, the actual map. So Tartaria, in essence, they're not the originators of these buildings. All right. This is my research, my opinion. Of course, I'm always open to learning more. I could be wrong, but so far, I don't know. I've written a book about it. It's called The Scroll of Remembrance, and we're going to go into great detail on what that really means. But covering this building issue and these bells issues, a lot of people thought, these buildings were built back in the days of Tartaria. And I'm not saying some of the buildings weren't, but most of them were already built after the flood. So after the flood, we had, it was before the flood, the lines of Seth. Excuse me, I was distracted. So the lines of Seth, so that's the the son of Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve had Cain and Abel. Obviously, we know that Abel was killed by Cain, and so therefore, Adam and Eve had another child, and his name was Seth. And it's fascinating because in the book of Genesis, it says something so peculiar. We're going to jump around a lot. We're going to get into some really interesting discussions. This is going to range from who you are to why your blood is so important. The scroll of remembrance is not these Tartarian buildings, it's you, okay? And I'm going to get into why you're targeted, how we were all, because this is all based off my own personal experience. I was trying to figure it out like a jigsaw puzzle. So if we go back to the book of Genesis, it says that the sons of Seth called upon the name of the Lord. And they were given special blessings, and that's in Genesis. And I don't want to have to belabor the point because I've already gone over it in great detail on my videos on the Ambassador Nectaria website, ambassadornectaria.org, and then the Rumble and the YouTube channel is Ambassador Nectaria. So it says the sons of Seth called upon the name of the Lord, which means the other sons did not call upon the name of the Lord. And these buildings that were so large and so huge, there's no way one could build that within just 100 years. And our lifespan that we have currently is that of 120 if you're lucky, right? So, and I think we'll get into that too in the future as to how that's going to shift again. So we have Adam and Eve, they lived in and around I think 800 or 900 years old. They became very old there, but they were large beings. These were not little small hobbits like we're 5 foot, 6 foot tall. That's as far as we're going to go, most of us. But the original blueprint for humanity, and this is believed even in Quranic writings, which is fascinating, is that the sons of Seth maintained their great stature, and they were very tall. I don't know how tall, but they were really, really tall. So when they're building these buildings, this is what I believe had happened. Number one, the continents at that time, again, this is before the flood now, not after, pardon me, before the flood, which means, in my opinion, we didn't have separated continents at that time. And that's why in France, there's buildings that look the same exact as in Philadelphia in the United States. Because I believe that there was no great, huge rift between us, as in the days of Peleg, which happened after the flood. So before the flood, our original parents, Adam and Eve, were very tall, and we were in a greenhouse effect. And at least according to my read on Scripture, and so everything was large. The tomatoes were large. Everything was large. And until the vault was split and split up, then the waters above the vault fell down and waters from in the deep sprang up. And that's where we all had the flood that we understand from the story of Noah. So here we are. We have these gorgeous, humongous, huge buildings. There's no way we would need, 70 foot, 100 foot, even larger doors. We can barely even open them. If you see the Swiss guards trying to open that at the Vatican, they're having a rough time, some of them. So, I believe, in my opinion, these sons of Enoch, the sons of Seth, and Enoch is of the line of Seth. They were large, and eventually, when these sons of Seth started to interbreed with the sons of Cain, who are the Illuminati, that's when their stature, they got smaller and smaller like us, like little hobbits. But they originally had the blessing of God on their bodies, and they lived many, many more years because they had that special blessing. So going into the buildings, Tartaria, around the 11th century, 12th century, it's believed that Genghis Khan was the one that was heading this. It was basically somewhere like maybe around 10 kingdoms that joined forces. And it was a very enlightened time, as according to these history books that I'm reading, which are pretty old. And he was a Christian leader, which was interesting. I've only heard horror stories about who Genghis Khan was. I had no concept that, they even changed his race. I mean, they absolutely rewrote all of his history. So upon the closer examination, these huge buildings were not built by him. They were custodially cared for by him, and these kingdoms that joined under one flag, which is where you have the purple dragon on it, or the purple, whatever the name of that creature is that's on that flag. So basically, where does that take us to? All right, so why would Kissinger want to cover this up? What's the whole point? What's the big deal about Tartaria? Who cares, right? Well, the issue is Tartaria, parts of it was mentioned in the Bible. So at the same exact time that the Kissingers were blowing up these buildings and pushing forward this reset, this whole thing with the World War II and all this other stuff that they're continuing to try to do to us since, the genocidal stuff in 2020, what happened was they were trying to cover this whole thing up because identical to that time they were doing these wars, and prior to that, same in the late 1800s, they were planning this, and even a little bit before, the exact time they were ripping out the books of the Apocrypha. When you go back to the original 1517 book by the Bible itself, that Martin Luther himself, who was actually reading the Bible in his own language, the original languages show that the apocryphal books were, in fact, intact within the books of the 1517 at that time. At the rise of the Council of Trent, and so on and so forth, these books were maintained, and then later in the 1800s, when they had to erase the history, there's a reason why they erased the history. They didn't want us to know about ether. They didn't want us to know that there was a such thing as this free energy, because people were, in fact, using it. And other places now, in Japan, and I think Singapore or somewhere else, they're using it still. You can actually see that in these buildings, you can see that they have the special antenna and special equipment still on the top of the buildings. But upon my recent field trip, let's say, I went to another place where they had these Tartarian buildings, and you can see scaffolding on the front of them, and they're ripping down, they're taking off the antenna off the tops of these buildings, because once again, they took the elemental chart and ripped out, the ether out of that. That's known as the fifth element. All right. So in the Bible, in Esdras and other books of the Bible, it speaks of a place that's mentioned in the Tartarian maps. It's called Arzareth. And Arzareth it's the top part of, past Russia today and closer into Alaska, and then even into the Americas. All right. So it was understood in the book of Esdras that there would be a day or a time or a timeline where the tribes would regather themselves the first time since their dispersal in around 700 something BC. So the tribes, the lost tribes of Israel, the 10 of them were actually traced to the Indian tribes. That's in the scroll of remembrance. Now, I'm not, I don't have the amount of time to go into further detail on this, but I've tried to break down some of the tribes. Some of that, so for instance, for myself, this is where it all began. The Cherokee, I'm Cherokee, Blackfoot, and Sioux Indian. So in the line of Gordon, which is my last name, Gordon Rawlings family, I found out that the Cherokee fall into the Levi tribe. And also, some have done more research on this. And late, I just found out recently about a wonderful researcher. Her name will come to mind. Sheila Holm. I think it's HOLM or something like that. And she's mentioning now very similar research that I've come across, which is very interesting. But my piece that I bring to the table that's very unique is this aspect of the kingdom age and why these buildings were blown up. Arzareth is America. America is the place where the tribes are supposed to be regathered. When the tribes are regathered, that changes the timeline and brings us back into a preparation mode instead of the onset of, oh no, the Antichrist is coming and we all have to be afraid and run to Petra and all those other places, run off into the caves. No, we don't have to run off into the caves at all. There's going to be a remnant, and just like the wheat and the weed grow side by side, the wheat is going to have the most preferred situation. as kingdom citizens, in kingdom age citizens, this is what's going to happen, in my opinion. And I've written seven books on this. Okay. It's called the Kingdom Age series. You can find it on Barnes & Noble. You can find it at Amazon and my website. Good luck. Sometimes you hit it and sometimes you miss it. It's on the tab scroll for Scrolls of Light. And we call them, because the heavenly terminology is not a book. They're scrolls. That's the way heaven calls it. So that's why I call it the Scroll of Remembrance. So in essence, and you, anytime, Gogi, if I'm going real too fast, you just stop me in my tracks and make sure that I'm making sense, because I want to make sure this is understand and comprehensible. So, in essence, the Rockefellers came later and actually participated in this cover-up. They were the first ones to be at these excavation sites in Qumran. They were the first ones, concealing, scrolls that they would find. And they were behind, obviously, the Rockefellers were behind 2020. It was a big deal to the Rockefellers that this whole, COVID thing took place. It was their baby. That was what they wanted to have happen. Because when they took those books out of the Bible, when you look at the books that they removed, it was the books that actually told you that there would be a different timeline. Yes, timelines can change in the scriptures. This has been proven with the book of Esther, with Genesis 19, when the angel came and helped save Lot and his family, and so on and so forth. Timelines can change. And so, basically, the Rockefellers were behind taking those books out of the Bible, the blasting up of some of those buildings. At the same time, they were behind the COVID. So what are they doing? What are they trying to do? And they were personally behind my case. Okay. And I tracked that. And if you want closer, evidence under penalties of perjury, you can look at the International Tribunal for Natural Justice and just type in Kiri Bernard into the YouTube search. If any reason you can't find it there, you can find it on BitChute, and that's Sister Kiri on the BitChute channel. So a few of those were saved and put up there as an archive. So, and I showed how Rockefellers were looking up on my website, tracking my progress on my court case. Okay. So, that didn't come from me. That was, empirical, absolute, evidence for that. So, what is this kingdom age business? Why did they blast the buildings? Why are they destroying the bells? And what can we do about that? And why does it even matter to us? What does the 1100s and Tartaria have anything to do with us? They needed to wipe out Tartaria. They needed to remove those books in the Bible because those books in the Bible pointed to the Tartarian maps. Before the maps were even created, the original maps were inside of these scrolls, inside of the scriptures. So you have the books, the wisdom books of Solomon. You can go in and get a whole list of what's in the Apocrypha and find out which books were removed. And again, you don't have to do all that research. It's on my YouTube channel. So if you feel like that's a lot to take, you can just look at the videos I've already provided on illustrating which books were removed and why. And it's all the discussions on Tartaria. So here we are today. They're using frequencies on us. They're taking the bells away, taking anything with good frequencies away from us. That's the whole point. And the sons of Seth that built these buildings, I believe that they were building them from a position of being cleansed in their bodies to the degree where they could work side by side with angels. I believe, and the record shows, especially in Ethiopia, that these Ethiopian Tartarian, so to speak, buildings were built side by side together with the angels. And it's according to the record in Ethiopia, they worked in the evening times. So the human people would work during the day, and the angels would work at night, and they worked 2.5 times faster than the humans. They were much more efficient. But people might say, well, how the heck can an angel help build a building? They do, you can touch them, you could shake their hand, they sit down and they can eat in front of you. That's in the book of Tobit. Oh yeah, that's another book they removed. They took that book out. Why? Because it shows how to make a good deal with the holy angels, how to have a covenantal I don't want to say contract, it's more intimate than that, but an agreement with a holy angel and how, there's an etiquette that one should have. So that's in the book of Tobit. And again, we could get into deep detail on each one of these topics. But for our sake, I'm illustrating that these frequencies were removed from us until the scrolls that were just written this year are unearthing them. And these frequencies, they were actually covered up by the Vatican. They've actually removed some of the tones in the Gregorian chant that used to be available to us. I have a whole study on that. That's a whole other separate discussion. We'd have to do that. That's in and of itself voluminous. And they also, in the time of the Tower of Babel, these frequencies that Most High have shown me in the book called the Psalm Codex, the frequencies that are coupled together as a partnership between the Psalms that we have from David, but they actually predate even David, because in the book of Job it says when humans were created, the angels actually sang psalms. They sang songs of joy, psalms of praise to God. So even before humans were created, the psalms were being sung by angels. All right. David, it just so happens that David was getting downloaded by the Holy Spirit to these angelic psalms. So David was able to chant his way into becoming a king and literally flip history on its side. And we are also being now put into that position again. Why? Because all those things that the Rockefellers and all these other ones tried to bury, we're bringing it all back out, and we're highlighting it and then amplifying it. So how the heck is the Psalm Codex, how is it that there's frequencies in that book that matches with the Psalms? And even in more advanced classes, it's called the Heavens Liturgy, that's separate. How could these Psalms do anything? Or how could they change what we're going through if we're going through a targeted situation? It's in my book, it's called No Weapon Formed. I actually get into how I strategized by God's help which Psalms to pray and coupled it together with special, ultraviolet blood irradiation. If you have graphene oxide, if you have other things in your body, I basically, I'm not offering legal, tax, medical, or financial advice, but I'm offering what exactly happened to my body with the actual medical evidence and my affidavits and the whole 9 yards, like legal paperwork. The attorney's signatures are in there. The letters to the Pope are in there. It's all in there. I just didn't, I had to shorten it to only 300 and something pages instead of thousands. So you have all my medical, you have the Raman spectroscopy, you have the blood results in there, you have the whole story in the No Weapon Formed book, and how I attacked it using prayer. And when you're calling upon those frequencies in prayer, and it's not just the Psalms now, we're actually mixing the Psalms and the Psalm Codex with the frequencies. These are the sounds that have not been heard on the earth as a collected unit. These have not been used together, married together, the Psalms and the frequencies, since before the Tower of Babel. So the Tower of Babel, what that was about in Genesis, is everybody had one language, one race. All the humans, all of us had one, we were all one, all right? And we didn't have separate, nations in that sense. We were all just under one tongue and in one. The angels came down and got humans to conspire against God and build, in their day, their version of CERN, their own hydrogen collider, their own ladder to the heavens, which was, it's a trespass, it's illegal, it's not lawful to use this technology. It's reverse technology, it's reverse engineered. It's like angelic, fallen angels are teaching humans how to make the breach. So God didn't say, oh no, that's not going to happen. No, God said, let's go down and confuse their languages, lest what they imagine in their hearts should come to pass. So it is possible to traverse the dimensions. And that's what we're dealing with now within these CIA things they're doing, like the Montauk thing where you sit in the chair, or all these other operations, to rip time and space fabrics apart in order to make the breach. And that's what's happened with CERN and so on and so forth. And that we're in the middle of that battle, and I do believe the holy angelics are winning against that. But the Psalm Codex is one of the scrolls that provides the psalm, the frequency, what the heck the psalm means, because a lot of times I'm reading them and I'm like, I don't even know what the heck this means. And it has the prayer of invocation and the frequency key and other devotional elements tying together, unifying your prayers with the holy angels and the saints that are alive. We're not praying to dead people. We're praying to people that are more alive than we are. So that's the Psalm Codex. So now going back to the bells and the frequencies, we now have capacity as a unit to join forces to stopping this technology that's done against us. So the reason why they're getting rid of all these bells and this frequency technology is because they don't want us to have the upper hand to be able to override what they've done to us. And by God's grace, I'm free. I don't have any of this technology in my body. I'm not emitting signals. I don't have any of that stuff. Now, sure, if you go down to the store and you eat the wrong foods, I have to keep up with making sure I'm not eating the wrong things. I'm not, I'm doing cleansing just on a regular basis as a maintenance. Absolutely. I think all of us should, because the foods that we're buying nowadays, it's just full of a whole bunch of, things that are very dangerous. It has nanotech in there. So we do have to make sure we stay clean. But the records show from the toxicologist and the private investigator that, yeah, she no longer has a signal coming from her body to the environment, and a total turnaround in results as a result of following the protocols. Now, the protocols in the beginning were very hard. You had to do 75 pills a day. Nowadays, we have things so much easier. We don't have to go through that. I was going through those things in January of 2013. There's so many other things we can do that don't have to tax your system the way I had to tax mine. So, all right, we're covering a lot of ground here. So, Gogi, how are we doing so far? Is all this making sense? Testing. You still there? Okay, I'm going to presume that you put yourself on mute. All right, so anybody, just if you need to stop me to just clarify or have me clarify something, I am totally open to that. So from this point forward, oh, beautiful. Okay.
I had to unmute. Just all is well. Thank you.
Good. So all right. So that's making sense now. Why the bells were liquidated and turned into bullets and all that other stuff and all that.
You covered a lot because you also mentioned Illuminati and the bells, the lost books, Illuminati, just a whole lot. So I'm listening, and I'm hoping that everyone is grasping it. And if I guess you want people to hold questions or comments to the end.
Oh, sure. I just want to touch base with you just to make sure I'm, because I want you to stop me if I'm going way too far off. Because I live, sleep, eat, breathe, and drink this stuff. So I'm totally happy if you need me to slow down. I'm totally okay with that.
All right. No, I'm good.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome. So in the scroll of remembrance, what I do is I bring together the concepts of how we can enter into this kingdom age and how the time fabric can actually shift. We don't have to change a timeline using some nonsensical technology and sitting in a chair or ripping space fabrics using illegal means to do it. We don't have to do that. Our prayers can pierce through. Okay, now I'm going to really throw you for a loop. Oh no. Our prayers can pierce through all the dimensional layers that are from here where we're sitting all the way up into where God himself is seated on the throne. All right. Now I know all the way back then in the book of Daniel and St. Paul have said, well, Daniel was praying, and I think it was like 21 days, and I think it was St. Michael who came to him, and Daniel's like, why did it take you so long? I was fasting and praying the whole time and I needed the answer. And he says, basically, my apologies, but I was held up in heaven because there's a cosmic war, and these fallen interdimensional angelic beings wouldn't allow this angel to get down to I don't know if it was Gabriel. I know Daniel had 2 angels he conversed with. So one of the angels, whichever one it was, I think it was Gabriel, who knows? I'd have to look back in the book of Daniel. But anyway, he said that I got held up in the heavens. All right? And so it's like, wait a minute, that's possible? Angels could, they'll end up duking it out energetically and they can't come down and get the answer from God's throne and bring it down to us on earth? Well, yeah, they can, but they have to fight their way through that. And, in the icons, especially in the Orthodox Church or statues in the Catholic Church, you'll see the statues with angels with swords. And it's like, so there is something about, there is a war that's going on, and it's a cosmic one. And it's happened long before humans even fell. Long before humans even were created, I believe there was a cosmic war. The fall happened before the angelic, and there was multiple incursions of that. And other scholars have actually illustrated that, like Michael Heiser, the late Michael Heiser, and Chuck Missler, and so on and so forth. These are absolute giants when it comes to learning the scriptures. Anyone like Tom Horn, Skywatch TV, L.A. Marzulli, all those guys. I think it's absolutely worth your while to go and study the scriptures. These are not sci-fi things. It's all real. And it does touch our daily lives. So, how does it touch our daily lives? Why the heck were we even targeted in the first place? All right? So, just finishing off that thought process about Daniel. Bottom line is, when we pray, and when Daniel was praying, and even St. Paul, there was a hindrance too. He couldn't get something done because there was a hindrance in the heavens. We're nearing the time, there was a 6,000-year lease where these fallen beings were put in charge. This is Deuteronomy 32. This is in the book of Joel. This is in Psalm 82. And I'm going to go over that in just a moment. I could go into let me put it this way. I could talk to you for hours on end, but let's put it this way. God put angels in charge of the nations at the time of the Tower of Babel. And that's Deuteronomy 32. And so, basically, let's read it right here. I don't know if I put this inside my scroll of remembrance. There's so much to say about it, but basically 32 verse 8, when the Most High divided their inheritance to the nations, when he separated the sons of Adam, he set boundaries of the peoples according to the number of the children of God, Elohim. Now, some Bibles say the children of Israel, so don't get lost there. That's a bastardization of the scriptures. They use the Schofield, which is a later changing of the Bible. They actually altered it because they wanted us to be confused. According to the number of the children of God. Now, according to the Psalms, Psalm 82, it says in there that all are the children of God, humans and angels alike. So these angels were actually put in charge. For the Lord's portion to his people, Jacob is the place of his inheritance. So God's like, fine, you want to keep following these demons? Good, I'll put them in charge of your nations. How do you like that? But I'm going to keep a portion for myself. I'm going to keep a sliver, the people of his people, the people of Jacob, which later is called Israel. All right? And those people will become God's people, his own. And that's his infiltration operation, because you got to have a little bit of leaven to raise up the bread. So that's God's way of, that was his way of saying, you have free will. This is what you chose. Fine. So all the nations have been controlled by fallen angels. That's why when in 1933, Franklin Damnable Roosevelt put us, and this is my opinion, from my research, I've studied this in great length. He put us in a covenant with fallen interdimensional beings. He's the first one. A lot of people credit this to Eisenhower. I think Eisenhower's a Johnny-come-lately on the situation. It happened first in 1934 under FDR. And from there, he covenanted with these fallen beings on behalf of all the people, because he's supposedly, allegedly representing the people. That's what these presidents are, supposedly representing the people. And he did it, behind our backs. And then later, he contracted with the Federal Reserve and all the way up through to the Vatican to take the gold away from the people. That's when the gold was illegal. You couldn't have it. That's through Public Law 7310. He took the gold away from the people. And then later he took over the entire republic in one day, in a coup d'etat. One day, FDR took over the United States Republic and turned it into a Roman Empire under Rome. How did he do that? So we always heard of the 1871 Act, where District of Columbia became its own sovereign soil inside of the United States of America. Well, whoop-de-doo, that was its own sovereign soil. So what? But the issue is, over time, they slowly had this snake poison the rest of all the other states, because each state was actually its own country. And it still is, by the way. If you read Timothy Zick's law paper, you will know that the states are still nations. And the government manual of 2008 and 2016 are also, it stipulates even to this very day, that you can have the state of Texas or Texas state, or the Republic of Texas, right? Or Texas Republic, to be more exact. So that's when they started this 1871 Act through the District of Columbia, which was controlled, by the Vatican through London, so on and so forth. They covenanted, and slowly, through the Franklin Roosevelt thing is the thing that did us in, okay? He pushed forward this thing called the Emergency Banking Relief Act. The Emergency Banking Relief Act caused a World War II statute to change one line. He amended it so that instead of the enemies without the United States being the ones that are under watch, he said, he changed the language to say that the enemies now are from within the United States. That's how you know that there was a coup d'etat, and that legislative absolutism is what ended up happening, and the Constitution was thrown out, pretty much. Now, you can still access the Constitution, but it's a very tricky situation, because now you have judges that are under people like George Soros and the whole nine yards. So if you try to go to try to win a court case using your evidence, it's very difficult, because the only cases I know where they won is because someone had to be sacrificed on the altar in those courts. And I know very intimately about that. I've been studying it for well over 25 years. So, and I'm not saying that the people that get their stuff are evil. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that not in all cases anyway. So anyway, Franklin Roosevelt, he put us in a covenant with fallen angels. There was a technology transfer program, and he said, basically, we'll give humans a certain number or amount of them, but you can't harm them. You have to put them back after you do what you're going to do to them to sample their genetics. Why would fallen angels need our genetics if they're the ones who created us? Really? Come on. There's a lot of people out there talking like that, using Zecharia Sitchin stuff and all this other stuff. Nonsense. And there's a whole book about that, by the way. It's called Christ the Cosmic King. And it talks about how to determine what's true and what's not true relating to the disclosure projects. People need to know the truth on this stuff and not be led astray. So FDR took away the gold and then turned all of us, the people, the citizens of the great republic, of what we were. We're supposed to be posterity to the United States of America. He made us all enemies combatants. And that's what justified them to write up code in, a Code of Federal Regulations and all these other codes, which are not the original understanding of our original American jurisprudence, and cause those codes to be written against us to make it legal to do these experiments to us. However, it's still not lawful. All right. So, And I do believe that there's a reason why certain groups out there are saying the military is the only way. That is the truth. The military is the only way. So I'm an advocate for that. I know that some people, they've gotten infiltrated in those groups, but by and large, I think from my assessment, that is the truth. The military is the only way, and the reason why is because in 1933, with this Emergency Banking Relief Act, all the people became chattels. Then they were allowed to sell us on Wall Street, the whole 9 yards with our birth certificate, and now they're doing it through the injectables. Once you got injected with the COVID stuff, you can track all those signatures to those signals back to who's leasing it and find out, oh, well, now your body is now property of that pharmaceutical company. It's wrong. It's not okay. And we don't have to tolerate this. It's against the 13th Amendment, involuntary slavery and so on and so forth, peonage, that whole 9 yards. I mean, all right, so how did we get in this situation in the first place? So the president, on behalf of all the people, made a covenant with fallen beings. They invited him into it. And ever since then, we've been put under these covenants. Well, there was certain paperwork that was styled by us, the ambassadors for Christ, and it was filed in multiple courts and internationally and all over the place, even at the Supreme Court level. And the paperwork was filed in a special way to give judicial notice to the judges, and militarily, the military was also put on notice. You basically have no authorization to operate under the Emergency Banking Relief Act in relationship to specific people. All right, to specific ones, that the American people, and to those who have committed themselves to Jesus Christ. You have no right and no title, no interest, no relation in that matter. So that paperwork was filed, I think it was 2020, and then I filed it in 2021, and I filed it in other places too. The purpose behind that paperwork was to create a different timeline for us so that we don't have to put up with that. We can agree to that paperwork. It's a declaration and a notice to the world. It's inside of the book called Christ the Cosmic King. It's up on my website. It's up on the YouTube channel too. I read it out loud for those who want to kind of use it as a prayer. It's extremely powerful. And I'd be happy to do a whole other talk just on that subject matter. But so if FDR made us all chattel and property, which is the nexus, the reason why we've all been put into these programs, then how do you reverse engineer it? Oh, all you have to do is undo the treaty that was done against you. That's why that paperwork was drafted. So that paperwork was sent out, and they were told, don't even think about it anymore. You're not operating this way. And you're not getting away with it. We know what you're up to, and we're not tolerating it. And number two, we're no longer enemies, combatants, because we've removed ourselves from being surety, which is the one that is the debtor in relationship to the birth certificate and all the other fiat, all these other instruments that they've created on behalf of our name. Those are programs that we do offer. We have very special programs that we offer to help people get out of that matrix. I've done it. So you're welcome to reach out to Gogi on that matter, and we'll, send you emails and you could view them. And if you feel you want to jump in, we will be happy to share with you what needs to happen in order for you to join that online program, the course, unto that fulfillment. So I reverse engineered it. They got us into this trouble with these fallen interdimensional beings. We said, no, we're not putting up with that. We changed our status. We're no longer property of the District of Columbia. This whole thing with the border has nothing to do with when they're pushing people through the border and having them come through when Biden was in there, Biden in quotes. That whole thing had nothing to do with just, the typical thing. Oh, just allow them to come in our country. No, it wasn't like that. They were given Social Security numbers when they crossed the border. Social Security number allows one to become a citizen of the District of Columbia. And they made us all citizens of the District of Columbia. So what I do is I teach people in my class, here's how you don't have to be, you no longer are surety, you're no longer citizen of District of Columbia. You still keep your social security number, but you turn it into an account and you're no longer bound to it. So that's why you have a bunch of strange stuff going on at the border. It had nothing to do with what the public story was all about. It was District of Columbia trying to gain more people into their ranks. That's what that was. Very fascinating, and it's very in-depth on a legal study on that. So then the next thing, you ask the other question. Okay, well, wait a minute. All right, great. Now I did the status thing. Now I'm out. I'm clean. I'm no longer under their treaty with this thing. I'm no longer an enemy combatant. Great. What's next? Okay. And I'm going to tell you straight up, this is my absolute experience. Without Jesus, I couldn't get through this. I'm just telling you that. There's no way I could get through this without him. All right? They tried to kill me 19 times. All right? That's all been documented. 19 times. I mean, I was in hospital. I mean, it was unbelievable what they did. And so, and if they had the chance, they'd probably try it again. You know, the Rockefellers, they're not nice. They're not nice people. So basically, and I tie the Rockefellers together with the evil side of the Jesuits. Not the regular Jesuit that's just doing his thing. He doesn't even know. Most Jesuits don't even know. I'm talking about the higher ups, the Jesuits, those ones. So we have to be careful. They're coming out with this real ID, the digital ID stuff. They're doing all this stuff with the COVID thing. They wanted us to do the swabs and all these things, and they were collecting our genetics. All right. And the point to that is that they were looking to find out, it's called chronosignatures. They look up to find out who's going to be compliant, who's going to be the one that they can even look into one drop of your blood has your entire future on it, your whole entire story and your past. And I mean, let's go even further into the past. Before you were born. And then you might say, well, what the heck? Before you were born, I don't believe in reincarnation. No, I believe in pre-incarnation, which is scripturally backed up. In Luke 1, it talks about the story of Jesus and the Blessed Mother, his mom, and it talks about how she's going to give birth to a son, and the angel's telling her, hey, this is going to happen. And she's like, well, how can this be? I don't know man, I'm not married, that way. And so the angel's like, no, the whole Holy Spirit's going to overshadow you, and this is how it's going to happen. She's like, okay, well, then let it be done unto me according to your word. And the same thing for Jesus' cousin. The angel came and told the dad when he was in there, Zacharias, in the temple, he was praying, and he spent a long time in there, and the angel's like, hey, you're going to have a son, and his name will be John. And he's like, well, how can this be? The angel can read you. And if you lie or try to hide anything, the angels already know. So the angel said, oh, so since you don't believe, we're going to make you mute. You're not even going to be able to talk as a punishment. In the book of Genesis 19, chapter 19, it says there was angels there. And these angels are physically grabbing Lot in the wife, the woman that turned to the pillar of salt, that one. They were pulling him out of a town because that whole place was going to be, blasted into sulfur. Blasted with sulfur. So the angel knew, like, they can read you. And so the angel actually caused the guys that were going to molest them, they actually made them blind. Well, how can they do that? Oh, frequency. The very things that they're trying to do to your body, the fallen angels are trying to subjugate you through frequency. So, reverse engineering it, we're freeing ourselves using the Psalm Codex frequencies to get out of their matrix. Because when you play your frequency, it resonates to such a degree, it literally overrides and kicks out the other frequencies. That's what prayer does. So when we pray, just like I was saying earlier with Daniel and the other story of St. Paul, they're trying to pray, but these angels are having fights to try to get the messages back and forth with these angels back to the humans. Well, when we pray, we can literally open the dimensions from where we're physically standing all the way up. Because there's 7 heavens according to the book of Enoch. Oh, another book they removed out of the Apocrypha. If you read the book of Enoch, they'll tell you how many layers of heaven we have. Most people look up at the sky and say, oh, it's an atmosphere. Well, that's fine. That's for one layer of it. If you keep going past that layer, again, read the Scroll of Remembrance, it goes into depth on some of these matters. And that's available on Kindle and on Barnes & Noble and Amazon. Scroll of Remembrance by an Ambassador for Christ, the Restoration of Memory, Lineage, and Unsealing of the Kingdom Age. So past this first heaven, where we're, the heaven that we're looking up, we could see the sky, there's other heavens above that. And Elon Musk's, in his little rockets, his little propellered stuff isn't going to get past that layer. It's not happening. It's not possible. In my opinion, that's my belief according to my scriptural, exegetics on it. The layers past that go into the other dimensions, and these other dimensions go up all the way up, even into the firmament. And it's not like a layered cake, okay? It's actually, some of the dimensions are stacked side by side, just like the Luke 16, where the Lord Jesus was talking about the dimensions, where they're side by side, and the book of Enoch talks about them side by side. But our prayers now, because the 6,000-year lease is up, very soon it's up, our prayers are penetrating past those realms with the frequencies. So you can become your own hydrogen collider, but it's not going to be unauthorized. It's going to be authorized and sanctioned by the Most High, so that you can bring down things that are bringing life into people in true sacred frequencies, like those holy bells that they're trying to melt down. We become those frequency generators. So the antenna that's on these, that are on these Tartarian so-called buildings, the brain is the antenna. It can override any and all of these weapons. The brain, when it's tied into the highest frequency, which is love and God. Love is a very high frequency. Very, very high. Fear is extremely low. When you're touching love, and I mean love that literally puts a fire inside of you, all right? They cannot even pass go or collect 200 or even get in your radius. And I know they've allowed me to talk about the subject matter about nanotech all day long on YouTube. No problem until 2020 came, then they ripped some of my stuff off the YouTube. But as soon as I talked about, because there was a married couple on Victoris Libertas TV, and they asked me, well, how the heck did you get through all of this? And I was like, okay, then we're going to have to do a whole program on love is the answer. That our greatest weapon, love is the answer, part 1 and part 2. As soon as that went up within less than, 72 hours or something like that, they tore it down. I was talking about how the love of God, when you get that flame and it's on fire inside your heart, that literally destroys their capacity, because you become the antenna and you're beaming in the frequencies of the highest realm of heaven, which is called Shemaim. You're beaming up into past the 10th, 11th, and 12th dimensions. Their stuff can only go past, it's on, I forget which dimension. I'd have to do the comparative analysis on their dimensionality chart to their frequencies. But when you rise up to that degree, 10th, 11th, and 12th dimension, string theory, which is, it's the 7th heaven that's explained in the book of Enoch, they can't touch you. So that's in the other book that I wrote, How to Touch That Frequency. It's called The Blesser Returns. And I talk about how love, romantic love and married love, and how all those different kinds of love, when it's aimed at God himself, it literally destroys their capacity to even touch you. That's why they make it illegal for someone secretly, quietly to pray on the side of a roadside in London, because they know when you're quietly praying on the street, they have technology that can read that. And they say, oh no, you're under arrest. Why? Because it's a violation of what they're trying to do on their level with the frequencies. You're the antenna. Tartaria is not the real building of light. You are the light in Christ. And I'm not saying, oh, go and ascend. I don't believe that. I think that the only way we can ascend is through Jesus Christ himself. I don't think we can ascend on our own, because I don't know anybody else who can just crawl up out of the grave and say, okay, I'm free now. I'm no longer dead. Jesus is the one who did that. He came down, became human, did the homeopathic thing for us, And he died, was buried, and rose again. That's the energy I'm locking in onto. I'm locking in to the true resurrection energy. And when we lock and load onto that, and our frequencies are matched and entrained together, when my energy is locked in on the resurrection energy, nothing can touch that. And that's the true way to ascend. And you're not ascending using fake means or fallen angelic technology to do it, or your own self, like, no, you're using the homeopathic remedy. Christ is the blueprint that reminds us of what we have. So what is this scroll of remembrance all about? All it simply means is, where all of us are being invited to remember, because we've been dismembered. All right. And when we came into this realm, and we've had serpents and snakes all around us everywhere we look, remembering means we have capacity to actually remember what humanity was like before the fall of Adam and Eve. So when I'm talking about lineage of light, I'm talking about in Luke, I think it was John chapter 1, where St. John actually goes through the whole genealogy of Christ, and then he says, and he traces them all the way back to the sons of Seth, and then back to Adam, and then back to God himself before the fall. And then you say, well, Jesus is traced back to God himself, and he's the Son of God. Well, how are we not equally the sons of God? Not in and of and by ourselves. We have to be born again. That's John 3:5. So he teaches us how to be born again. Well, that's what that means. It's to no longer be as in Adam all died. No, it's we're regrafting into the original light as created beings. Jesus was not a created being. He's got the uncreated energy. That's the only difference. That's the difference between Christ and us. So we're sons and daughters of the Most High God when we accept him and we're baptized, in spirit and truth and the whole 9 yards in water. And then we have this power to go back to the way it was before the fall. And they can't stop us. They can't stop us. So it's angelic technology they're using against all of us. That's where they learned to get all these the LRAD, all that stuff, all these plasma, all these machines that they're using against us, all the lasers, all these different weapons. That's fallen angelic technology. Well, there's angels that didn't fall, that are on our side, and they're showing us, just like in the book of Luke, Luke chapter 1, the angels went up to, in Luke 22, the angel actually comforted Jesus, they're all around us, but it takes a very special soul to be able to know, oh my gosh, St. Paul said, you got to be nice to strangers because you don't know. You could be entertaining an angel unaware. That's how real they are. You could shake their hand and sit next to them and talk to them and the whole 9 yards. So the fallen angels actually illustrated that point, that there's angelic beings that, when NASA was trying to beam out whatever that was in the Arecibo, that operation there, these fallen angels did a crop circle and compared the human DNA to the angelic frequencies. All right? So it's these fallen angels that have come into our government, and humans have made agreements with them. Now, Trump is not in agreement with any of that. And he's not a savior. But there is no golden age without us bringing in the kingdom age. The golden age rests upon our prayers. The only way that we can actually win is through the prayers. So, the golden age is like a prelude, the kingdom age is where you and I take a stand and do something about all of this. Governments are not going to come to our aid and our rescue because they've been involved in this for a long time. Maybe in the future, when there's enough of us, we can create the infrastructure. Maybe the government will come in and do what's right. I do know that the FBI specifically, Patel, there's been articles that Patel and Bongino ended up getting rid of the Southern Poverty Law Center, which was the the Vatican's infiltration into the FBI, but I would like to see further things relating to the Epstein case settled before I encourage targeted souls to going in to get their complaints heard by the FBI. So we have to be careful. We're in a very unusual time, and I don't know that, I think they're on the right track, but I don't think they're there yet. We have to pray them into that capacity. So, all right, so now we've come into the aspect of, all right, we can win, we can, our frequencies, we can override that with prayer, with Christ. This whole discussion is nothing more than like a reverse engineering of what they did to us so that we can know that we have the power to be able to take our lives back. All right. And as a collective, when we do this and we encourage one another to do this, that's why I sat down in 1 year pretty much and wrote all these books in this 1 year. Because this is the recipe, this is the blueprint that helps us become free. So then it gets into the question about real ID and the digital ID and all these other systems. We have to be very careful because, and even if someone took the jab, because a lot of people out there are saying, well, once you took the jab, it's too late. There's no hope for you. It's over. You've got the mark of the beast. That's it. No, there's a way around all this. You can repent. Right now you have capacity to still repent of it, but they are perfecting that technology. And at some point you won't be able to repent. Why? Because the technology will get to the point where it erases your free will. Once your free will is erased, it's over. So as long as you have your will and you can strengthen that will, and of course I do that by praying the Our Father, that's what helps me strengthen my will against those who have a will to cause harm. That's the key that I use. So there's a special, prayer protocol that I follow. And again, that's in the Psalm Codex, as far as that process goes. It's in the beginning part of the book. So going into, if one purchases the Scroll of Remembrance, there's a picture in here, and I do feel like this does warrant explanation. There's a picture in here of my MRI, and then it shows, in my brain scan, it shows an image of what appears to be an anthropomorphic figure. And the figure looks like he's saying or singing or doing something. And I don't redact any of the medical record. I just literally put it right in there for you to see. And your guess is as good as mine. Like, if you're looking at that and you see a human being inside that MRI, then it's corroborated with a bunch of others. That's what other people are seeing there too. So upon closer examination, I went through my family, my bloodline, at the invitation of a dear friend of mine. He's like, I don't know. I think you need to look into your bloodline a little bit. Why don't you look into your grandfather? I'm like, huh? What did you get my grandfather out of this figure that's in the middle of this MRI? I was like, well, let me give it a shot. Let me just give it a shot. So I went through and I did some research on the Gordon family line, and I went back, and that's how I found out that, oh yeah, I'm Sioux Indian, and John Gordon married the Sioux Indian lady. She was a princess. And the gentleman that's in my head, I went to findagrave.com, and sure enough, unbelievably, the image in the picture of this John William Gordon fellow, who's my great, I think it's 4 times, grandfather on my mother's side, it looks like he's the one that's actually seated in my head. And I'm like, well, why the heck would some guy, why would a historical guy like that be in my brain, on the image, right? And again, I'd have to probably give the photo to Gogi so she could share it with y'all. Or it's in the book. It's on page 33 of all things, 33. So if you look there, I did more research and found out that this man was a Freemason. Ding, ding, ding. That's what gave legal jurisdiction for me and my family, my uncle, to be chipped. This is what gave the jurisdiction. So when you're in the Illuminati, they're looking, if you remember if you ever get the chance, watch the movie Jupiter Ascending. In that movie, you're going to see Jupiter she's being examined by these so-called doctors, and these doctors they had interdimensional beings inside the doctors, in their person, and they were looking for her in her bloodline, and what they were looking for was covenants, agreements. So that's when I realized, okay, I have to break the covenant that this great-great-great-great-grandfather did in order to be free. So that's another piece that's really important. So we have no weapon formed. It gets into some of the Psalms, and it tells you the medical things and all these other measures I took physically to heal my body. The Scroll of Remembrance gets into, okay, well now I have to repudiate and get rid of oaths that were done in my family bloodline. And so that's in the Scroll of Remembrance. Then you get the Psalm Codex, and it tells you, oh, okay, well, these are the prayers you mix together. When you're saying the prayers out loud, you don't even have to sing them. If you can sing, great. But you could say the prayers in the Psalm Codex, mix it together with the frequencies. Now you have the remedy for the frequency. Then the Blesser Returns gets into how to cultivate that intense fire, that love for Most High God, so that you can go past the frequencies in the seven heavens all the way up to the 10th, 11th, and 12th dimension. So that's that other book. So these books are all, and the first book I don't really talk about much. It's called Divine Challenge. That's just illustrating how I got into this mess in the first place. When I went up against the Catholic Church and became a whistleblower against the Vatican and against the orders in the Catholic Church, and namely the Cistercian order and the Jesuit orders. So that's the first book. It's the Divine Challenge, and it has the actual real court documents and regarding the case that caused me to be able to find out how our country was taken over. So that's the first book is Divine Challenge. And then, of course, the Heavens Liturgy that's a whole separate thing. That's a very advanced, that's actually a class. And it goes into teaching people how to chant the way it's done in heaven according to this new prayer, the new song that's spoken of in Revelation that St. John saw in the book of Revelation. A new song will be sung. And I believe there's a new song that's to be sung now to bring and anchor the kingdom age onto the earth. And what does the kingdom age mean? It simply means it's a respite. It's a time where people that love God will have the opportunity to establish his kingdom before he comes on the earth to rule for 1,000 years. So he's not going to come though until Acts 3:18 through 21 is activated. And I should read that to you, and I think we could probably conclude with that, because I hope I didn't overwhelm everybody. But let me go to the book of Acts, chapter 3, verses 18 through 21. And this is how I was able to figure out that we were actually in this timeline. It all kind of came together. It's connected to the book of Daniel where there's that big, beautiful dream, the scary dream that King Nebuchadnezzar had, and Daniel was able to illustrate what was happening in the dream. All right, I'm going to have to talk about this before I get to Acts. This is important. Why the heck do we go to the government and the government won't help us? Here's the reason why. When Daniel had the dream, or Nebuchadnezzar, the king, had the dream, and he went to his magicians and asked them, can you please translate this dream? And if you don't, basically I'm going to kill you. So they're like, well, we can't translate it. We don't know what it means. And so Daniel steps forward and says, listen, I'll help you with the dream. And the king's like, no, why don't you not only help me with the dream, tell me what I dreamt first, then give me the interpretation. He's like, oh boy, the only one who can help me with that is my God, the King of Kings. So Daniel prayed, and God allowed him to have the same dream that King Nebuchadnezzar had. And he went back to the king and says, hey, here's what happened. You had a dream. You saw this big, huge statue, and it was scary, and it was, formidable. And the statue at the top had a head of gold, and that stands for the great kingdom that we're in right now, Babylon. And then he said the next one is silver, and that's going to stand for Medo-Persia. We know now that it's Medo-Persia, of course. The bronze stood for Greece. That the iron and clay, iron mainly, was Rome. And then Jesus is the stone not built by hands, and he's going to come and destroy the feet of this statue. Well, the feet of the statue in Rome, that in the clay mixed with iron, is all of these kingdoms that have emerged since the Roman Empire it didn't die, but it was undercover through all of these different let's say corporate entities, government, NGOs, corporate entities that rule the world, these global things. So Daniel explained the dream to Nebuchadnezzar, and that represented all of the governments on earth. Now this ties back to what we talked about in the beginning of our talk. It goes back to Deuteronomy 32, where God said, hey, you want to worship these fallen gods? Okay, great. Then I'm going to let them rule over you. But I'm going to keep a portion of people for myself. So throughout this whole statue, which represents all the governments of all time on the earth that are, these governments are represented in the statue. The statue represents the full lineage of time all the way down to our day. And we're now at the time where the rock started to fall, Jesus started to fall, and started to strike the feet, but he started to fall, the stone in the image, Christ, started to fall at the time he was born. So he came from heaven, the stone started to fall at that time, but now the stone is crushing the feet of clay and iron. Okay, so when all these kingdoms were destroyed, like you have the stories of the Habsburg Empire, and you've got, Russian Empire that was decimated. You've got all this is all around the world wars. It was to destroy the kingdoms on the earth. Well, now they're all broken down into these fractured pieces, and iron and clay is reminiscent of that. It's the iron is the offshoot of iron being the kingdom of Rome, or the empire of Rome. So now, where we're at, why can't we go? Why can't we go to the government and just get help from them? How come they won't help us? Because they can't. They're still under the demonic, these fallen beings that have controlled the government, going all the way back to Deuteronomy 32. What's going to replace it? When will we ever get our remedy? This is my opinion. Very, very much believe this. And if you read my book, No Weapon Formed, you'll see my legal documents. I actually brought this subject matter up in the affidavit, and I sent it off. $6,000 worth of mailings to the Queen of Norway. I sent it off to multiple heads of state. I sent it off to Obama. You name it. I sent it off to as many as I knew to send it to. And I basically said, you better be on the right side of history because the stone is falling. I said that in my affidavit. That's what I said. Now, I didn't know what the heck I was saying in 2015. Well, now I get it. Because upon retrospect, I'm looking back, I'm like, whoa. Okay, so the stone is falling, and it's going to crush the feet. And that's the time we're in. Well, when the feet get crushed, all the governments of the world are preparing for the coming of Christ the King. This is the time where the emergence of the kingdom age is coming into play. So the rock that crushes these systems, it's good for us, but it's bad for them. So this world is only going to get worse for them, and it's going to get better for us if we're in the kingdom mindset. So we don't want to look around and be afraid. We want to repent. We want to be, whatever we can do to just, grab onto truth and hold on with our whole lives. We will be protected. Okay? And that's another reason why in 2013, I'm like, people keep saying, oh, the Antichrist, it's coming. I was like, I don't know why, but because I've been healed of this technology, which to me was a prelude to the mark of the beast, I'm believing that we're not going to be in a situation. We're going to have a respite. We're going to have a time. I didn't know that the kingdom age existed. I didn't know what words to call it, but I kept saying, I think we have like a 500-year window before all that proverbial crap hits the fan. So I'm just like, I don't know. And then later, others out there were starting to talk about the kingdom age. I'm like, wait a minute. I've been saying that for years without saying it. I just didn't have the words to put on it until I started to read the apocryphal books more closely. So here's what I believe. As we build up the embassies of light and we continue to work with one another and we continue to build what we're doing and we create the infrastructure, the governments are going to look to us to be the remedy because they can't provide it. And the scripture says, come out of her, come out of Babylon, lest you be partakers of the punishments of her sins. So even people in the government and in these churches that are finding out these churches are bowing down to this, they're corporate. These churches, these 501c3 churches are under the jurisdiction of this statue, of this beast, of the fourth beast specifically, which is the iron, the beast of the Rome. All right. They're coming out. People are leaving. They're coming out in droves because they don't want to be partakers in this. And that's another service that we offer. Of course, write to Gogi about it because God only knows if you ever email me, if it ever makes it to me. Write to Gogi about it and just say, hey, I want to know, how do I get out of Babylon? I want to get out. I want to be able to do things like have a ministry and not even operate under where I have to file with the IRS under 26 U.S. Code 6033. There's ways of doing it. Well, how do I leave a legacy for my children and not have to deal with probate and the state coming in and taking what's mine? There's ways to do it legally and lawfully and righteously, and I've been doing that for well over 20 years. So that's another thing we offer, but Gogi is the intermediary on all of that. So then, anyways, we are the remedy. I've looked and looked. I've literally driven up. I've gone to the FBI. I've pounded on their doors like, come on, I know someone on the inside. They told me to come up to the doors and call out for agent so-and-so. They're like, well, we can't meet with you. I'm like, well, how do I set up an appointment? Well, you got to call. I said, I do. I call and I call and I call. So many of you have experienced this. Like the walls go up. You can't get through. Then I had someone inside the FBI write a letter asking Trump to put me on on a task force. And she gave her real name and everything. Here's my name. This is when I worked. I met you, Trump, on this day or around this year and blah, blah, blah. And, it's obviously a highly confidential letter. I'm not going to reveal my source. But, I've done everything I know to do to win in a righteous manner. And the only way that I was made an offer. They said, we'll give you $100 million, but you better shut your mouth. And they said, stop being a shit disturber. That's what they said to me. And I said, let me ask you a question. This was an agent inside of the DOD who was working with another contractor inside of Homeland Security. This was back in, oh gosh, I'm bad with times. That's why I have to write everything down. Whatever, somewhere around 2015, somewhere around there, give or take. Anyway, and yes, all those calls were recorded, and yes, all of those calls and the documentation went up to Secret Service back in 2016, I think, late 16 or early 17, somewhere around there. And they offered it and said, oh yeah, we want to be a liaison between you and the Vatican, and we can help you, and do you know anything about Project Lucifer? And we can help you, we can get you money, but you have to shut your mouth. And that's when I said, hold up, just for a second. Do you have anybody you love? Do you know anybody? Do you have a family? Well, I said, do you even have pets? Like, do you have anybody that loves you? Or is it, because most people in government, they don't even like their families. They don't even have families, Maybe I shouldn't say most people in government. That's, I don't know, a great percentage of them, let's say it that way. So anyway, they make this offer to me, and I said, listen, if I take your lovely little deal, it would be great for me, but it's not going to go over well because they're going to come after you. And they're going to come after, because he's like, oh, in the beginning, he's like, oh, this is a bunch of crap. This doesn't exist. I says, fine. I'm going to call up the lab. We'll send everything through chain of custody to your lab. How do you like that? And if I'm lying, I'll give you a power of attorney. You could take power of attorney if you want, and you go ahead and you put me in a padded room. But I'm telling you right now, I'm not lying. And once all the stuff made it, he brought it into his lab. He says, I did an assay on this. He said, what the hell is that doing in your head? I said, I told you so, but I'm not here to talk about that. It's in my head. Help me to get it out if you would, please. Show me how to get it out. That's number 2. And number 3, if you have family or even love anybody and you believe and you fear God, then I'm not taking your $100 million offer. We need to do something. And we need to do something. We have to figure out how to help others to get through this. And then the other one. So I was offered the money, but I didn't take it. And then I had attorneys on my case. I had 3, really awesome attorneys. They knew what the heck they were doing. And eventually one of them was crying and he's like, he was scared and he's like, I don't want to die. So I said, look, everybody's fired. I'm not letting anybody die over this because things got heated and things started to happen to the attorneys. And I said, you didn't do anything wrong, but we're not doing this. You're not dying over this. This is stupidity. For money? Really? For money. And I said, no. And I bought him the books by Lee Strobel on the case for Christ because he's an attorney. So I said, you got to get to know the Lord. Then you won't be afraid of death. The remedy is us. And if eventually when there's more of us in numbers that really are competent and can come together and do this, I think we're going to have a way out. But I don't believe the government's going to be the answer. And if it is, I think it's going to be, we're going to provide the remedies first and then, find out how we can possibly get grants, but not be under their thumb, not be, targeted by the deep state, so-called, however you want to call it, for doing the right thing to helping other people. Because I know the people that do help others, like Dr. Hildy, that lady has taken it. She's taken it on the chin. And it's not right. They're burying people alive for helping others. And it's just not right. It's not okay. So it makes sense why people don't want to be involved in any of this. They just want to, get out. That's what I was just trying to do. Figure it out. How do I get out of this? How do I stay out of this mess? And, because, there's only so much energy. There's only so much. So if we come together though and start implementing the real remedy, which is the frequency in the Lord Jesus himself, in my opinion, that's the only way out. And the only reason I believe that is because Franklin Roosevelt believes the only way in was through Satan. So I'm just reverse engineering it. It's not even a religious thing for me. It's just simple, plain old reverse engineering. That's all I did to get the remedy. And the Lord, the Holy Spirit shares everything with me. So to culminate, to bring this kind of to a close, and then we can open for questions if that's possible. I just want to reiterate, why are they so powerful? So what? You pray a psalm, so what? Who is it? One of the reggae guys, chant a psalm a day. How do the psalms do anything for us? Number one, it creates a barrier around us. They're living waveforms, and they are, they're recalibration stations, I guess, for taking the time that you're in and reformulating it into a higher dimension. The higher dimensions they're not into time. Time is the 4th dimension. So when you're invoking things from the higher dimensions into time and space, you're literally shifting a timeline towards righteousness. And, light. So I was saying earlier, Elon Musk's rockets can't even touch or kiss the end of the dimension that we're in. It can't do that, but angels move by light, not propulsion. So when you're praying the Psalms, you're invoking light. It's not man-made. You're not forcing it. You're not striving. You're not pushing. You're not boxing, using a boxing match. You're simply leveraging energy for energy to get the higher energy to come in. And obviously the holy angels are activated to bring healing and protection and to intervene in your situation. So nations and wars end up ceasing because of this kind of prayer. And the kingdom, it causes the kingdom of darkness to collapse because light chases away the darkness. And that is not a spiritual, like, religious thing to say. That's actually metaphysical. It's scientific. So then we get into the resonance, because I know I use a lot of these words and I should clarify them better before I discuss these words. But resonance, all that is it's like when, someone sings really, like an opera singer sings really high and she can crack a glass across the room. That's what resonance is. So it's not, she's not taking a baseball bat and smashing the glass. No, she's using frequency and it's vibrating. And the object is reminded of that frequency, and if it can't hold it, it literally shatters it. The frequency is the speed or the pitch of a vibration. So love is the high frequency and fear is a low one. And then your harmonics, that's just a fancy word for combining waveforms or combining these frequencies. So if you add, 432 hertz with, 777 or whatever you're doing, and you're overlaying that with chanting the Psalms or saying them out loud. I do them in Latin in the morning. That's one of those, after all those years being in the convent, I learned a few things, and so I still stick to my old prayers. But harmonics is when you're combining frequencies together, and it gives it even a more layered and powerful effect. It's like chord in music, so these psalms are heavenly frequencies, and they're from the higher dimensions. And these are, they're a ladder into heaven. And basically it causes you to go back into your pre-fall nature. So before you existed, the reason each one of us was targeted is because they want to find out what our scroll is saying. So they will do anything and everything. If they can force you to do a COVID test, they're going to take all that and try to find out, what are you up to? What's the calling on your life? Because we were packaged and then sent here, and all we're doing is unraveling the story. That's all we're doing is unraveling it. Well, they want to know beforehand, what is that story? Because it's pre-built in us. Just like an acorn has the architecture of the oak tree on the inside, the same thing is for us. So if you could picture looking up at the sky and seeing scrolls coming down like light, that's what that is. So when the scroll and your mom and dad become one, that spark, that flame, causes that scroll from heaven to come down and be knit together in your mother's womb. And that's in Psalm 139, where this eternal being is now sewn together. That's the soul is the zipper. It connects the fire to the clay. That's the easiest way I can put it. And so they want to find out all about that. And that's why they want your blood. And that's why they want your genetics. So we all got to be very careful, not be too generous with with our genetics. And that's another thing that we offer in that online course. We protect people, and we help them to evade and get around legally the Digital ID Act. And that's how we do what we do in all the states. Now, there's other people out there that are doing it. They're like, oh, come to us and we'll help you. But, we can only help you in these states, but we can't help you in the 4 states. What was it? Florida, Texas, Mississippi, and I think Washington or Oregon. I don't remember which one. There's 4 states. And they say, no, you can't get out of it. You have to do the ID this way with the star on the side of it. So I have a way to protect your status and your biometrics, so that fine, I'm not going to drive on the side of the road and then have a cop pull me off to the side of the road. I'm saying, generally speaking, not myself, because I'm in a different situation as a whistleblower, but as a regular person out there, I'm not going to take a chance with police that are strung out on monster drinks and coffee who have no legal background to understand what the heck you're going to try to do. I think everybody should go in and get a driver's license, because you don't want to have that legal argument at the side of the road with two policemen. And I know the police are doing the best they can, but man, they're jumpy. So some of them are. And you could be as gentle as a lamb and they're still jumpy. So the easiest way to deal with it is to have yourself, you've got your driver's license, but when you go in to get the driver's license, there's a way that we do it where you're not a U.S. citizen and you're not a foreign national either, but we do it a proper way, and we file paperwork so it's lodged with the courts safely, and we couple that documentation in with a bunch of other documents. And when they go in and take your picture and do the thing in those 4 states that don't let you get the other option out, to opt out of that the ID there, then at that point they put themselves in a legal conundrum. Because if they violate and they send that off or force you to get a vaccination, or they report you to credit agencies when they're doing their whole thing with their credit profiling stuff, if they don't like what you post to YouTube or whatever, then, your credit gets dinged. Okay, great. Well, now you're in violation of the documentation, Mr. DMV or Mrs. DMV. So now we have a case. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to do. I'm building an infrastructure so each one of us can be protected at the highest levels. So an attorney will likely take on a case like that instead of put their own necks on the line to deal with this other targeting stuff. But I don't know. I still keep my finger on the pulse, and I do pray, number one, that liaisons will become available. If anyone out there is willing and have the credentials to do it, to become a liaison into the FBI, I would like to work with you behind the scenes under a non-disclosure agreement, and I will show you how other people won their cases, but because they were people of a protected class, they were able to win, and they got their millions of dollars. So I have the cases proving how other targeted people won their cases. But we need a liaison that's going to go into the FBI and, that have the credentials to do that, and to be able to present the cases in a manner that's respectful of both sides. So once that happens, then there's a specific procedure that the FBI have to follow by law. And, it's beautiful. Then once they prosecute the other one, the ones that allegations are set against them, then you take the records once you win on the criminal side of it, which they will seal the documents, by the way, they will do that. And then you go to a civil attorney, and then you can win your money. You can't, I don't know of the other way to do it. I know of another person who won, but, I don't think winning in the public arena is available just yet. I think that in the private side, these judges, it's a tricky situation they're put under. A lot of them didn't even take an oath anymore to the Constitution. So it's a real tricky situation we're in here. So anyway, I hope that was edifying for you. And it's always a pleasure to be with you, Gogi. So feel free if you have any questions, but I covered a lot of ground there. Testing.
You sure did.
Okay,
sure
good.
Did. Thank you.
Awesome.
Hi. You covered an awful lot of ground. I didn't even expect so much, and I'm so grateful for you and your expertise and for your willingness to share. I want to open up the floor for anyone who has any questions. I'll just ask you to a small group to unmute yourself and introduce yourself, city and state, and your question or concern. Thank you once again, Sister Carrie.
My pleasure.
All right, anybody?
Sister Carrie?
Hi.
Can you hear me okay?
Beautifully.
Hi. This is Dayan in Chicago. That was absolutely fabulous. I hung on to every word.
Thank you.
I think he said that we should be careful about protecting our DNA.
Yes.
Don't they already have most of it? Mine was collected when a police officer stole mine out of a trash bag I threw into a city garbage bin.
Lord have mercy.
So I just wanted to, yeah, I know. And he's the one striking me for this, too, I found out. So, but he stopped since I had a conversation with him.
Now, do you know why? Like, what was behind that?
What was behind that is the lies of the handler who lives in my building, wanted a lesbian relationship. I believe she wanted that, and I told her no because she knows I'm a devout Christian. She wanted recorded so she could embarrass me and blackmail me and control me thereafter. I think that's the gist of that. She lied to him. He and I were actually attracted to each other, but the devil always hates two good people coming together, and she ensnared him. He was, lonely. It's a kind of a story, but kind of that was the gist of it. She's lied to him, convinced him I'm a bad person. Whatever I said against him, I could tell because whenever he saw me, his posture would change, like I'll show you, instead of being welcoming and kind like he was at one time. But anyway, he collected the DNA. So I guess there's no way about protecting it, is there? And aren't most people's DNA collected once they do have this implants in them, or no?
All right. So a couple of things. Now, I'm not offering legal, tech, medical, or financial advice. However, I think you're doing a good job, and I would say to document everything in a memorandum for record or a little journal by a lampstand or whatever. Just keep it in a safe spot, and just keep, really keep good tabs on that. And just keep it down to what we say is four corners. So you've got the who, the what, the when, and the where. If you're lucky enough to know the why, then put it in there. Just say, I think this is the reason why, but you're reserving it because you may or may not know, right? So, that's the first and foremost thing. Just keep documenting everything and keep those documents safe and take pictures of your wonderful journal and keep it on a little USB and hide that somewhere else too, just in case, because you have to duplicate, because I've had to do that too. One time they drove by my house and blew up $6,000 worth of my computers. And I just laughed and I was like, nice try. Because guess why? I had other stuff somewhere else. And I was like, nice try. You're not getting away with that. I have everything saved on another location. So there. So that's that. So the other part is, the four corners. What was it? DNA. So the DNA, what we can do now, all right. So obviously I'm expecting you love the Lord. You know him. You sound like you do. And,
I absolutely.
Praise God, sister. So, all right, now, oh boy. So this is going to get a little deep, but I'm also going to encourage you a couple things on the DNA. You can still protect your DNA legally, lawfully, systematically in the manner that we would do that. And there is a way to do it, and that's where you would contact Gogi and we would facilitate a time to work together on that. But the key to protecting that, this is the highest spiritual key now that I'm sharing with you. Once upon a time, I was in a hospital. In the hospital, I was there for well over a month. These guys poisoned me nasty, and it was bad. I almost died, okay? I mean, they were having hospice come in, not hospice, pardon me, the ministers coming in to pray last rites. I slapped the lady's hand. I was like, no, pray for me to heal. Pray for me to heal. Don't do that. She's like, oh, okay. I said, yeah, let's switch that prayer up, okay? So, so then, as I'm in this hospital, the Center for Disease Control, they came in and through another doctor, and they says, hey, we're in a unique situation with you, because there was something unique going on with me. And, they says, well, we need to take your blood. And I said, oh, that sounds reasonable. Go ahead. And the whole 9 yards. So they took the blood, and then she comes back, and I don't know, maybe 2 days later, I guess, and says, we need to take your blood again. I said, look, why do you have to take my blood again? You just said that you needed it for this, this, and this, and this, which, I had all the papers down there and I could do a cross-reference to why she needed to analyze it. And she says, well, to be honest with you, we lost it. And I was like, well, all right, I'll hand it to you. Sometimes things when you guys are going too fast or whatever, I get it. All right, fine. No big deal. We'll just, hey, everybody makes mistakes, right? So I then, gave her the blood again, and then, she comes back in, another one from the same, venue. And they're like, hey, we need to take your blood again. So they did it to me 3 times. And then another nurse came in and literally started taking blood out of my arm, like 6 freaking vials, okay? This was unbelievable. 6 vials. And started throwing it in the trash. Now, I get you have to flush it out. You should do 2 to 3, not 6. I said, you better stop right there. You stop right there, right now. And she's looking at me. I says, I have to call in the other nurse. I says, they were threatening to give me a transfusion and you're taking my blood and throwing it in the trash? I said, that's enough. That's enough. And, so she got up out of there and I was taping her. I had her on certain things. I taped it because I was feeling weird. 95%, maybe more, were beautiful. The nurses were beautiful. Just that little stinky 5%, like 3 bad apples. 3 bad apples. You got to watch out for those. So then at that point, that's when they said, well, we need your blood again on the 3rd time. And I said, no, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. That's on you.
Yes.
So this is what happened. When I was in the hospital, a friend of mine came in and gave me Holy Communion. What happened was they couldn't read my blood because it was redacted. Holy Communion rewrites... Say that again?
Go ahead.
Holy Communion rewrites the blood at the quantum level or higher, okay? So Holy Communion, it's not just a symbol like, I believe in it's a symbol and all that. No. It's truly the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Christ, but it's higher than a hologram. You're not taking a bite out of his arm and saying, oh, goody, I had a nice little bite there. That's a part of him. Jesus says, no, I give you my flesh, I give you my blood, and my flesh and my blood, you have life within you if you take these things, right? So eat my body and drink my blood. So what it is when you take this, when you partake of his body and blood, because he's in the higher dimensions, he's resurrected, it overwrites the code of what we have for our own. And it raises us up to the stature of who we are before Adam and Eve's fall. We're raised up to that status, and that's where we get the resurrection energy. So we're not taking a bite out of his arm. That's cannibalism. We're taking his whole entire body, blood, soul, and divinity as a higher than a hologram so that he can rewrite us and raise our own blueprint pattern of our body into his raised body. That's where we're worshiping his resurrected being, not the dead. Jesus, if he died on the cross and didn't rise, we would be the most pitiable of Christians. That's what Paul says. So we believe in his resurrection. So Holy Communion, number 1, is the fastest and easiest and most gorgeous, beautiful way to protecting the DNA and the RNA and everything else, our entire beings. That's first and foremost. On the legal end, on earth as it is in heaven, okay, because you did what on earth as it is in heaven with the Holy Communion. Now, and if you go to Holy Communion, it should be someone holy, someone, not some regular Joe Schmo who's messing with kids, okay? I'm talking, you gotta do your homework here and pray and ask the Holy Spirit. Do I go to Holy Communion here or there? Generally, 9 out of 10, if you're dealing in the Tridentine, like Latin Mass type of stuff, they tend to be more reverent. Orthodox, okay, great. You might hit it. You might actually do well if you found something like outside of the World Council of Churches, depending. But in the ultimate, if you can't get access to a quote unquote church, there is a protocol that we offer, to people too, but that's a private by request, through Gogi alone. That's very private, but it's just for those who can't get access to a church. You know, so that, hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. You know, we had some similar things. I have not had anything near what you had, but they are always losing my blood test. A nurse pointed out the scar tissue on the upper inside of my arm where they've taken so many. They always lose them. So I don't go to doctors anymore. It's been a couple of years. I won't even go to them. The interesting thing there is I can't get out. I have a disability due to all of the assaults. And once a week there is one of the moderators who gives Holy Communion. I'm so drawn to that. Maybe this is why. I had no idea. I'm so grateful to know that as a way to protect ourselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's just, I can hardly wait to just devour your books. I am so thrilled to even have just met you this way, and I thank Gogi for having you as a guest and letting me know you're going to be on. I could call.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Gogi's audience is the best. It's absolutely the best. You're all like oriented to remedies. You want solutions. You're doers, you're movers, you're shakers. I'm in all the way with people like that. I'm in all the way. And as far as getting the books, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, if you can get on my website, I think you can. It's the ambassadornectaria.org and the Scrolls of Light. All of the books are on there, and it's on the Scrolls of Light page right there.
The ambassadornectaria.com?
.org. Yeah, ambassadornectaria.org. Or, if it's easier for you, embassiesoflight.org. It goes to the same spot. embassiesoflight.org.
You know what? I'm going to have to call and order it from Barnes & Noble, I think, because they've destroyed my tablet and iPad to have nothing to email on.
Thank God for Barnes & Noble.
I will get there.
Awesome.
It's amazing.
Please do, if you get the opportunity, please do go on and do the, 5-star, 6-star, whatever they have on there, please, because I need more, whatever they call that, recommendations or whatever, reviews. So, yes.
When I get to a device I can use for email, because I have an old flip tech phone, no email on it either, I will definitely do that.
Thank you.
And I'm looking for a helper now to just pick up my mail and get my groceries and do laundry. So once I get her, we'll be in business.
Excellent. That's wise. Excellent. Excellent.
All right. Anybody else? Thank you for that, Daylene.
Yes, hi.
And hi. Give me 1 second. Okay. Thank you, Sister Carrie, for the compliment, and I just wanted to second it. I believe that the Jamsters are the best.
Absolutely.
Best. So, thank you for that. All right, go ahead, Meg.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so glad to have even caught some minutes of it, and I hope I look forward to absorbing more later, and even just knowing that God is part of the process and the psalm. But I just want to see if the last lady's question about protecting DNA was the same process that you had mentioned the first time you came to Gogi's meeting. Because since I missed today, a lot of today's content, I remember from the first meeting when you were saying how you followed some procedures so that a lot of the data that they could take and then and use and maybe own, you were able to gain ownership of it. So I don't know if it's the same DNA issue.
Absolutely.
Or if something different when they.
Absolutely. I think I gave a little more dimensionality in this talk. I just felt more, I think it's because we're getting closer to Christmas, so I'm like bringing in more spiritual element to it. But I think the first talk I was primarily focused on no weapon formed, which was the remedies that I went through with that, more so my story. And now I'm bringing in the Holy Communion element. But the program, I probably did not go into the real ID or the digital ID stuff in the last conversation, because I was at that time developing and perfecting that part of the online course. So I have everything else perfectly fixed up for the passport online course, but I wanted to perfect the driver's license. And the only reason why I want to perfect it, here's the reason why. There's a lady out there, and she's doing a great work, and I really respect her for what she's doing. She's saying, I need opt out of the real ID. Opt out, opt out, opt out. And that's great. The problem is when you go to the website, when you go to her website, she says, opt out, but then she tells you to go to get a passport card and a passport. And all of that is real ID compliant. So I'm like, wait a minute. You're telling people not to get the ID, the real ID with the star on the side of it. And then you're telling people, well, if you can't get a driver's license because they won't let you without that marking on it, then just go to the passport. Well, I looked online at the Department of State.gov and I found out, no, these are real ID compliant too. So wherever you go, you have to put in your claim. And we were able to do that with the passports, but with the driver's licenses, some of my clients in other states, they've been able to just drive on a passport. But with other people in different states, now I don't tell my clients to drive around without a driver's license. But if they feel more comfortable doing that, one time one of them was stopped. She was stopped and had me on the phone as her counsel. And I just told the police, I said, look, she's in a really odd situation. And I went through her situation with him and he's like, wow, that is weird. I said, so I don't know what to do with her. And he just laughs. He's like, well, just slow down a little bit. And I said, thank you for your time, officer. Just stay safe out there. So, but everybody's in a different situation. So there's people that in her situation, it was some weird tax bill and they were traversing state lines and telling her she can't even have a driver's license because she was in arrears on some kind of a state tax bill. I'm like, that's not even constitutional. I'm like, that's whacked. So I said, just keep it in your glove box. And if you get stopped, you'll have a way to explain it. But with my other clients, I like to say, okay, just get a driver's license, and don't just go around with a passport. But people that are going in and trying to avoid this real ID thing, they might mean well, but they're still complying with it. So you still have to protect yourself. In China, they have the credit system there, and they're running people. And if you say one wrong thing, then you don't get access to buying groceries at the store with your credit cards or debit cards or whatever you have. So they're going to try this stuff over here. And I love the lady's website. I forgot her name. I really love her attitude. But I'm looking at the website and like 288 people were successful in trying to get this done. And 80 people, no, it was the other way around. No, yeah, 80 people were not successful and they tried. And I'm thinking, isn't there a way to get more people to protect themselves? And that's why I devised this system. So I took everything that I've done, and I've been studying the law for, like I said, 25 years or thereabouts. And so what I do is I integrated what I've been doing successfully all the way along with the passport process. It's called Reclaiming Your First Estate, and the Kingdom Restoration plan there. And I just integrated it into the driver's license part. And of course I did it on myself first in my own unique way because I have a very unique situation. And so, that's what we're doing. So definitely reach out to Gogi for sure if you have any interest in those areas, and just say, hey, driver's license thing or whatever, just anything that helps her remember what it is. And I'll send her information, the flyers with the huge discounts, because we have major discounts for Christmas and like $1,000 off the program. I mean, it's if you do both programs, you get $1,000 off. So I'm doing what I can because freedom needs to ring, just like the bells we're talking about. And if I can make it any easier on people to get there and do it, that's what I'm doing. That's what it's all about. Or we. I don't say I, because I have a team behind me too. They're a small team, but they're faithful. So And we have 100% success on this. And the reason why is because we don't just tell people what to do. We're with them every single step of the way. We do not let them just take knowledge and run around and do it wrong. No, when you get your appointment, I'm there, I'm on the phone, making sure it's being done right, and we do it in a way where it's totally diplomatic. So there's no argument. We don't have any arguments with anybody. We're friendly and we're diplomatic. Why? Because we're not enemy combatants. We're actually the real posterity to the nation. So we have to be treated that way. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you and more. Thank you so much. I look forward to more connections.
Awesome.
God bless.
Me too. You too.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Anybody else? Thank you for your question, Mary. Okay. Well, Sister Carrie, I've already received an email of interest, and I hear that another person is interested, so I look forward to the follow-up. We'll schedule some time together. I immensely enjoyed this.
Beautiful.
Very, very informative. I thank you once again for your time and your expertise and for coming back, because once you clear yourself from the nano, a lot of people would just clear themselves and keep moving, but you're back and we appreciate you.
It's my pleasure.
All right.
That's my pleasure.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I hope to see you Tuesday night on the Jam. Be safe, be warm, and enjoy this season. Jesus is the reason. God bless you.
Amen.
Amen.